My name is Lily Smith, and I'm 31 years old. If you'd walked into my apartment 3 weeks ago, you might have thought it looked peaceful. Soft light bleeding through half-closed blinds, the smell of sandalwood candles, the faint hum of the dishwasher cycling. But quiet doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes quiet means the oxygen has already left the room. I run a small home renovation business here in Charleston. I fix what's broken for a living. Cabinets, water lines, people's trust in their walls. I thought I was pretty good at fixing things until I realized I'd spent the last 8 months living with a man who only saw me as his safety net. His name is Mason Torres, 28 years old, self-described creative consultant. That's what he called it, at least. In practice, it meant spending hours on his laptop building his brand and posting motivational quotes about abundance while I covered most of the rent, 80% to be exact. I co-signed the lease because his credit wasn't great. That should have been my first red flag. Instead, I called it love. That night, Mason had a surprise planned. I came home from a job site covered in sawdust to find candles lit, meditation music playing, and Mason sitting cross-legged in our living room like a monk in Lululemon. He gestured for me to sit down. "Lily," he said, voice soft and steady, "I've been doing a lot of inner work lately. I've realized that my energy has been stagnant. I need space to evolve into who I'm meant to be." I remember blinking at him, trying to figure out if this was about us or his latest online workshop. "So you're breaking up with me?" I asked. He nodded solemnly. "I think we should take a break. But of course, I still want us to be friends. You've always looked out for me, and I know you want what's best for my growth." Friends. The word dropped like a nail hitting tile. I looked around the room, the apartment I paid for, the furniture I assembled, the plants I kept alive because he forgot to water them. He was telling me we were ending, but in his head, nothing would actually change. "Mason," I said carefully, "what does being friends mean to you?" He smiled, that radiant, self-help guru smile. "It means staying connected, still supporting each other. You could keep the lease like it is until I can afford my half again. I'll still need help with the car and business expenses for a bit, but it's temporary. And of course, I'll help around the house when I can." I stared at him. He genuinely didn't see the problem. In his mind, he'd just demoted me from girlfriend to unpaid assistant. "When you say you need help," I said slowly, "you mean money." "Don't make it sound ugly," he said, frowning. "It's not about money. It's about generosity, energy, exchange." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. I was exhausted, covered in dust, listening to a man who didn't pay rent lecture me about energy exchange. He leaned forward, touched my hand. "We're mature enough to handle this with compassion, right? You've always been so supportive. That's one of the things I love about you." That was the moment something in me went still, not angry, just still. I realized that Mason wasn't breaking up with me because he wanted to grow. He was doing it because he wanted to keep taking without feeling guilty. He wanted me to stay in his orbit, funding his spiritual journey, while he got to call himself independent. I smiled. "Of course, Mason. We'll still be friends." His entire face lit up, relieved. He started talking about how proud he was of us, how healthy it was that we could handle this with grace. He didn't notice that I'd stopped listening. That night, after he fell asleep surrounded by his candles and crystals, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop, paid the last of the shared bills, checked the lease terms, and called a friend who rented a small house 20 minutes outside the city. She said it would be available that weekend. I closed my computer, looked around our apartment one last time, and thought about all the times I'd said yes when I should have said no. Mason wanted independence. He was about to get it. The next morning, I left for work like usual, kissed him on the forehead, told him to have a good day, and walked out knowing it was the last time I'd leave that apartment as his anything. That evening, I packed quietly. Clothes, tools, paperwork, every small thing that was mine. I didn't cry, didn't rage, just folded my life back into boxes it had come from. When I locked the door behind me, I didn't feel loss. I felt balance. He had asked for freedom. I was giving it to him. As I drove away with my truck full of boxes, I caught a glimpse of the building in the rearview mirror, our apartment, still glowing with the last of his candlelight. He thought I'd keep taking care of everything even after he ended things. He thought friendship meant servitude dressed up as compassion. But real friendship, the kind that's mutual, honest, equal, looks very different. That night, I promised myself I'd show him what that really meant. By Friday, Charleston felt like it was holding its breath. Storm air with no rain. I stacked toolboxes in the bed of my truck, taped shut the last box of kitchen plates, and set my drill on the counter like a period at the end of a sentence. Mason kissed my cheek on his way out the door, linen shirt open at the throat, a weekend bag slung over his shoulder. Moonrest Retreat, he said, as if the name itself came with enlightenment. Phone's off for mindful presence. I'll be back Sunday night. Enjoy the silence, I said. He winked. You too. The door clicked. It took exactly 3 seconds for the apartment to shed the costume he'd put on it. Vision board quotes, crystals lined up on the windowsill, a ring light that had replaced our lamp. What remained was a structure. I know structures. When the weight distribution is wrong, you either fix it or you watch it buckle. I put my phone on this counter and started. Clothes first. Work jeans rolled into tight cylinders, 2 flannels that still smelled faintly like cedar. The black dress I wore the night we signed the lease because I thought grown-up choices deserve ceremony. Then the small things you forget are anchors. The mug with a hairline crack that still held coffee, the chipped tape measure that belonged to my dad, the Polaroid of my first solo kitchen install, thumbprint in the corner. With every drawer, I could hear his voice from 3 nights ago. We'll still be friends, right? You've always looked out for me. The words weren't cruel, they were worse. They were entitled, so certain the world would rearrange itself to his comfort that he could state it as kindness. By noon, the apartment had been surgically separated into mine and not mine. I left his things as they were. I did not leave a note. Instead, I opened the browser tabs I'd queued up in a folder titled Freedom. Dominion Energy, water and sewer, internet, streaming, trash service, car insurance, phone family plan. We'd merged because it was more efficient. Each call followed the same choreography. Hi, I need to transfer the account. To whose name, ma'am? To Mason Torres. Yes, he lives at the service address. Correct. I'm removing my autopay. No, I don't need a final bill. Please prorate through today. The reps were polite in a way that felt like gauze. One of them asked if I wanted to schedule a shutoff. I looked around our living room, his meditation corner, his lilac yoga mat, and said, no, keep everything on. He wants independence, not darkness. Noted, she said, typing. Confirmation email sent. Then the lease portal. I messaged the landlord. Heads up, I'm moving out this weekend. Mason is staying. The lease states either party can terminate with 60 days notice. I'll cover my portion through the end of the notice period. After that, please coordinate with Mason directly. I attached the clause screenshot. People respect quiet when it comes with paperwork. By mid-afternoon, sweat ran down my spine, mixing sawdust and sunscreen and adrenaline until it all just smelled like decision. I loaded the last box, locked the door, and stared at the key in my palm. The metal was warm from my skin. I left it on the console table. It had been heavy for months. Now it was just a shape. The small rental house was 20 minutes out of the city, 1 story with a porch and a fig tree that had learned to lean. The woman who owned it handed me the keys with an apologetic smile about the paint color. It's a little too cheerful, she said, gesturing to the buttery yellow walls. I could use cheerful, I told her. She left me with a welcome candle and a note about the best place to buy peaches. I set my boxes in the living room and listened. No playlist, no ring light. The quiet here sounded like possibility. I sat on the floor, back against a box labeled kitchen, and let my breath catch up with me. Most people think courage is loud. I've learned it's often the whisper that says enough, and then picks up the phone to change the utilities. Sunday evening, when my arms finally stopped buzzing from lifting, I opened a fresh email draft and sent the last confirmations to a new folder named Receipts. Then I wrote one short text. Lily. Hey, just a heads up. I moved out over the weekend. All utilities and services are now in your name. The lease office has been notified. Wishing you a grounding week at home. Take good care. I pressed send. The message left like a clean cut. The reply didn't come until Monday afternoon. My phone skittered across the workbench from the vibration. I let it buzz 3 times before I washed the grout from my hands and checked. Mason. Hey, what do you mean you moved out? Did you mean took some stuff? The internet isn't working. I have a brand call in 20 mins. I wiped my palms on a rag and typed slow. Lily. I moved out. The accounts are in your name now. If there's an outage, contact the provider. The call center can push a reset. 3 dots, then a flood. Mason. This feels punitive. I told you I needed time to evolve. You're doing this while I'm centering after retreat? The timing is... wow. Lily. You asked for space. I'm honoring it. Mason. But friends don't abandon each other. You know my cash flow situation. You've always been so generous. I stared at the word always. How generosity calcifies into expectation. How expectation becomes demand. Lily. Friends help each other become self-sufficient. I believe in you. The next call was the leasing office. Hi, this is Andrea. I received your message, Ms. Smith, just confirming I'll need Mr. Torres to submit an updated application if he wants to assume the lease solo. Credit check required. Copy, I said. Please communicate that directly to him. I will, and good luck. I went back to work. The backsplash tile clicked into place like a language I'd been fluent in before I forgot myself. When I finished the last row, my phone had 6 missed calls from Mason and 2 voice notes. I put in my earbuds and listened. First voice, butter soft. Lil, this is obviously a misunderstanding. I thought we agreed to handle this compassionately. Can you please put the internet back on auto for 1 month while I organize? Second voice, brittle. I can't believe you did this without warning. It's actually really manipulative. You know I have a launch this week. Are you trying to sabotage me because you can't handle boundaries? I hit delete. Not because I was angry, because I knew if I kept them, I'd start answering arguments he made up to keep me standing in one place. By Thursday, the storm finally broke, outside and in. Rain carved lines down my truck windshield while I sorted orders under the awning. Mason's name flashed again. Hey, I said. Silence. A tremor of breath. Then, how am I supposed to afford all of this by myself? I stepped out into the rain so the sound would be louder than his panic. You said you needed to grow, Mason. Growth comes with weight. You lift it. So that's it? You're cutting me off? I'm not cutting you off. I'm stepping out of a job no one hired me for. If you need resources, the providers can set up payment plans. The landlord can explain your options. He tried a different key, one he'd used before when my boundaries were softer. You know I never meant to take advantage. It's just, you're so capable, and I'm still figuring things out. Being capable isn't a currency you get to spend for free, I said. Not anymore. He exhaled hard, and for a second the mask fell. If you cared about me, you'd help. I care about both of us. That's why I stopped. The line went quiet long enough that I thought we'd disconnected. Then he said low, people are going to think you're cruel. People are going to see you stand up on your own. I hung up and leaned my forehead against the cool metal door of the truck until my pulse matched the rain. That night, he started posting. Not about me by name, never that obvious, but about women who punish men for healing, about scarcity mindsets, about releasing the need to be needed. The captions wore compassion like a costume. The comments fed on it. A few friends texted to ask if everything was okay. I answered with a mirror. Everything is as it should be. When the week turned, the first real hint of rot surfaced. I was sorting receipts when an old email pinged, one I hadn't used since we booked a trip months ago, a password reset notification I didn't request. I frowned, changed what I needed to change, and filed the thought under Watch This. On Sunday, a DM popped up from Tessa Reed, his roommate, the photographer with the steady eyes. Hey, sorry to bother you. Quick question about the power bill. Mason said something got messed up. Can I ask you something? My stomach did that small, informed twist. The kind it does when you walk into a house and smell damp under fresh paint. Ask, I typed. Her typing bubble appeared, disappeared, came back. Actually, can we talk tomorrow? It's more than the power bill. I put the phone down carefully, as if the weight of that message might tip something over if I handled it with the wrong grip. Independence, I'd learned, always sounds noble at the beginning. The truth is what it costs. We were both about to find out the price. The next morning started like any other Monday, except for the unease that lingered in the air, like static before a storm. I was cutting drywall in an empty townhouse when my phone buzzed again. It was Tessa. Hey, sorry to call out of the blue, she said, voice cautious but kind. I don't know who else to ask. Something weird's been happening with Mason. I leaned against the counter, wiped the dust from my hands. Define weird, I said. She sighed. He told me you froze all the bills out of spite, that you were trying to ruin his business launch. But now he's saying he can't access some account because your name's on it. He's been crying to clients on speakerphone. I'm just trying to understand what's actually happening. I exhaled slowly. Nothing's frozen. Everything was transferred legally, with confirmation numbers and receipts. He's just not used to paying for things himself. Tessa laughed softly, not cruelly, just in disbelief. That tracks. He still owes me rent from last month. Keeps saying cash flow is energetically delayed. That made me smile for the first time in days. But then her voice shifted, hesitant. He's also talking about some business loan he took out. Said you helped him set it up when you two were together. My hand stilled over the counter. What loan? Something about his creative consultancy. He told me you co-signed, like months ago. I didn't co-sign anything, I said quietly. Tessa hesitated. I didn't think so, but he mentioned your name when the bank called. They said you were listed as secondary contact. That night, I barely slept. The words co-signed loan kept circling back, a phrase with teeth. I opened my credit report the next morning, scrolling through accounts I recognized, mortgage, business line, card, and then there it was. A small business loan, issued 4 months ago, $5,000. My name beside Mason's, my signature. Except it wasn't mine. It was close, too close. A digital scrawl that mimicked the slope of my L's, the flick at the end of the Smith. He must have used an old e-signature from a travel form, repurposed it. I felt my pulse throb in my throat. I called Nate, my accountant. He answered on the second ring, his tone easy, until I told him why I was calling. Wait, he reached out to me last week, Nate said. Wanted help structuring payments for that same loan. Said you'd be involved. He used my name, I whispered. He forged my signature. Silence. Then Nate's voice, calm but firm. Lily, that's fraud. We need to report it before it escalates. Do not talk to him directly yet. I'll handle it, I said, just quietly. That afternoon, I met with a lawyer, a woman named Carmen, who spoke like a scalpel, precise, clean, professional. She laid out my options. Report immediately, file an identity theft claim, have the bank freeze the account. You're not liable, she said. We can have your name cleared quickly, but be prepared. He'll realize something's happening when the investigation starts. I thought of Mason's face, the performative calm he wore when he lied, how easily compassion became currency. Carmen studied me. Do you want to confront him first? The old me might have said yes. Might have met him at a cafe, listened to excuses, accepted tears. But now the word confront felt unnecessary. I didn't need to fight him. I just needed to let the truth do the work. No, I said, let's file it. By the end of the week, the investigation was active. The bank flagged the loan as suspicious. Mason's digital signature didn't match authenticated patterns. I imagined his face when he opened that first notice. I didn't feel satisfaction, just clarity. Saturday morning, my phone began to buzz. 1 missed call, then 5, then 12. By noon, there were 17 voicemails. I listened to the first one on speaker while organizing paint samples. Mason. Voicemail. Hey, Lil. I got this weird email from the bank about an inquiry into the business loan. They must have made a mistake. Can you call me? Voicemail. Lily, seriously, this is stressing me out. I can't get through to anyone at the bank. Did you talk to someone? Maybe they confused our files? Voicemail 9. You said we'd stay friends. Friends don't sick lawyers on each other. I can't believe you'd do this to me. Voicemail 12. You know what? You've always hated seeing me succeed. That's what this is. Punishment for not needing you anymore. Voicemail 17. Nothing but heavy breathing and one muttered line. You can't destroy me. I didn't respond, not one word. The following week, I got an email from Tessa. He's spiraling, she wrote, posting vague stuff about being betrayed by small-minded people who can't handle emotional evolution. Also, the police came by this morning asking for him. It wasn't vengeance, it was gravity. The lies just fell back to earth. When the fraud confirmation arrived, it was almost anticlimactic. A formal letter with my name cleared, his charges pending. I held the paper like something fragile, proof that I'd been right to walk away when I did. That night, rain hit the windows hard enough to drown the sound of my phone buzzing again. Mason's name lit up the screen over and over. I let it ring. He left one final voicemail, his voice hoarse, panicked. Please, Lily, just talk to me. They're saying I could get charged. I didn't mean for it to go this far. We were supposed to help each other. I thought we were friends. I closed my eyes, the irony almost too sharp to swallow. Friends don't forge signatures. Friends don't steal identities. I typed one last message. Lily, friends don't commit fraud, Mason. Then I blocked his number. The next morning, I walked into a new client's home, a kitchen remodel for a retired couple who offered me coffee before we even talked measurements. As I took the first sip, I realized how quiet peace actually sounded when it wasn't hiding something sharp underneath. But peace never lasts long in stories like this. Because a week later, my phone rang again. Not Mason this time. It was Carmen, my lawyer. Her tone was calm but careful. The bank's formal report is in. Mason's lawyer wants to negotiate a plea deal. No jail time if he pays restitution immediately. But what? He's trying to spin the story. Says you manipulated the system to punish him. And he's talking. Online. I looked out the window at the rain-streaked street. Somewhere in Charleston, a man who once preached about energy alignment was now choking on the consequences of his own choices. He can talk, I said quietly. I've got receipts. Still, something told me the fallout wasn't over, because men like Mason don't go quietly when the mask cracks. They perform, they twist, they drag the stage lights with them as they fall. And I knew the next act was coming. It started as a whisper online, then a hash, then a near. Mason's first post appeared 3 days after the fraud investigation was finalized. A dimly lit selfie, eyes wet, captioned, "Healing is painful when someone turns your kindness into punishment." He didn't tag me, but he didn't have to. Everyone who knew us could read between the lines. The comments flooded in. Friends, mutual acquaintances, the kind of people who love drama as long as they can call it empathy. "You deserve peace, King. Some women can't handle growth." Each comment a little pat on the back for a man who'd stolen my name to fund his own illusions. At first, I ignored it. I've learned that silence can be sharper than any defense. But silence doesn't travel online. It gets rewritten. By the end of the week, he'd built a full narrative. The struggling artist punished by the cold-hearted ex who weaponized the legal system. He wasn't just performing innocence, he was performing injury. And people love a wounded prophet. Tessa texted me screenshots. He's saying you framed him. That you're jealous he's thriving without you. I can't even correct him anymore. He doesn't listen to anyone. I thanked her and went back to sanding a kitchen cabinet. It's funny. When you work with wood long enough, you start to recognize warping early. Moisture, heat, pressure. Doesn't matter how polished the surface looks, rot spreads from within. And Mason was rotting publicly. The storm hit in real life a few days later. Tuesday morning. Mount Pleasant. A family home mid-renovation. Clean white walls, half-finished marble counters, sunlight like warm milk pouring through the windows. My work truck parked out front with Smith & Restore lettered across the side. I was running wiring when I heard it, tires screeching, a car door slamming, then his voice. "Lily!" That name, my name, torn out like an accusation. I stepped outside, heart steady but pulse high. Mason stood in the street, eyes wild, holding his phone like he was still live streaming to an invisible audience. "You think you can ruin my life and walk away like nothing happened?" he shouted. Neighbors came out onto their porches. The homeowner, a young mom, pulled her toddler closer. I felt a flicker of pity for everyone watching. "Mason," I said, my voice low, even. "You need to leave. This is a job site. You're trespassing." He ignored that. His voice cracked as he kept shouting. "You forged the story. You lied to the bank. You made me look like a criminal just because you can't stand seeing me succeed without you." Something in me went cold. Not rage, clarity. "I didn't make you look like anything," I said. "You did that all by yourself." He froze for half a second, then started laughing, a strange, brittle sound that made the air feel thin. "You think you're the hero here? You weaponized your pity. You made me dependent so you could feel powerful." I took a slow breath. Behind him, someone's phone was recording. A neighbor, probably. That lens glittering like a mirror. I said, quietly but clearly, "Mason, I didn't ruin your life. You just ran out of people to hide behind." The words landed like impact. For the first time, he had nothing to say. His jaw worked, his breath shallow, the facade cracking one syllable at a time. Then he snapped, kicked the front tire of my truck hard enough to set off the alarm. The metallic shriek split the air. The homeowner gasped. Somebody called the police. I heard it in the background, the quiet panic of numbers being dialed. Mason's face twisted, desperate. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "You think you've won, but people will see what you did." I stepped forward just enough for him to hear me over the blaring alarm. I don't need to win. The truth already did. Then came the sirens. Blue lights flickering across his face, washing away the last pretense. He backed toward his car, shouting something half-coherent about betrayal and injustice, then sped off, leaving tire marks that looked like signatures of chaos across the asphalt. When the officers arrived, I told them what happened, voice steady. They asked if I wanted to press harassment charges. I shook my head. No, I said. He's already being punished by his own story. That night, my phone buzzed nonstop. Someone had uploaded the video. The caption read, "Contractor keeps her cool while her ex melts down." Within 24 hours, it hit 2 million views. By the next morning, clients were calling, emails piling up. "Are you the woman from the video?" one asked. "If you can stay that calm under pressure, you're exactly who I want running my remodel." Business doubled, then tripled. And as the irony settled in, I couldn't help but laugh, not cruelly, but in disbelief. Mason had tried to destroy my reputation, and in doing so, handed me success I never asked for. Tessa called later that week. "He's gone," she said softly. "Packed up, deleted everything. His family came to get him. He's back in North Carolina." In Nanette. I looked out my window at the quiet street, evening light pooling on the walls. "Good," I said. "Maybe silence will finally teach him what reflection never could." When the call ended, I stood there a long time, listening to the hum of my own house. Steady, intact, mine. For the first time in years, there was no one else's chaos echoing inside my space. No one to save, no one to fix. Just me, a woman who'd finally learned that sometimes strength isn't about fighting back. Sometimes it's about standing still while someone else's storm runs out of air. And that, I realized, was the truest repair I'd ever made. 10 months later, Charleston had found its rhythm again. Morning gulls, the scent of rain on brick, the low hum of construction that never really stops in this city. My company was booked 6 months out. The viral video still circled every few weeks on social media with captions like, "This is how you handle chaos," or "Queen of Composure." I didn't correct them. It wasn't composure, it was exhaustion turned into clarity. The noise around Mason eventually faded. People moved on to the next scandal, the next video, the next lesson they didn't live. But some stories don't end. They just get quieter until one day, someone you've stopped thinking about reappears. For me, that happened on a Tuesday morning. I was meeting a client at a cafe when a woman in blue scrubs stopped beside my table. "Lily Smith?" she asked. I looked up. She was familiar, though thinner, more tired around the eyes. "I'm Harper," she said, "Mason's sister." I set down my coffee slowly. "You don't owe me anything." She shook her head. "Maybe not, but I owe you an apology." Harper sat across from me, fingers wrapped around a cup she didn't drink from. "I believed him," she admitted. "When everything blew up, he told us you'd sabotaged him, that you'd used your business connections to destroy his credit. My parents were furious with you. I was too." I nodded. I expected that. "But then he moved home," she continued, voice quiet, heavy with hindsight. "And we saw it. The spending, the denial, the way he still talked about energy and manifestation while asking for money, he didn't pay back. He forged our dad's name on a loan application. When we found out, he called it a misunderstanding. That's when I realized you weren't punishing him. You were protecting yourself." Silence sat between us, soft and final. Harper looked down, then said, "He's working part-time now, retail. His credit's shot. He keeps saying he's writing a book about resilience, but I think he's just trying to believe he's still the main character." I exhaled, a slow release I didn't know I'd been holding. He always was good at writing stories. Her eyes glistened, a sad smile. "He lost everyone who ever tried to help him. But I wanted to thank you for not letting him take you down too." When she left, I sat for a long moment staring at the swirl in my coffee. People talk about closure like it's an event, a door you shut and never reopen. But it isn't. It's realizing the echoes don't hurt anymore. Later that afternoon, I walked through a client's half-finished kitchen, sunlight spilling across the new oak flooring. The scent of fresh varnish filled the air. Warm, honest, real. My new assistant, Jonah, was marking measurements. We'd met on a job a few months ago. Steady, kind, quiet. He respected boundaries like they were load-bearing walls. When he looked up and smiled, it wasn't with expectation. It was with understanding. Partnership, not rescue. After he left for the day, I stood alone in the space and recorded a note from my business page. Something simple, unscripted. You can't rebuild anything until you stop patching what refuses to hold. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let something collapse. Because collapse clears ground. It makes room for what's meant to stand. That post didn't go viral. It wasn't dramatic enough. But the comments that came were small and sincere, people who saw themselves in the wreckage. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine, listening to the hum of crickets and the soft click of the ceiling fan. 10 months ago, I'd thought walking away from Mason was losing everything, but all I'd really lost was the version of myself who believed love meant endless repair. Now I know love is partnership, not penance. And boundaries? They're not walls, they're architecture. Somewhere out there, Mason was probably still telling his story about the cruel ex, the ruined career, the injustice of consequence. I didn't hate him for it anymore. In a way, we both got what we needed. He got his independence, and I got my silence. Different lessons, same teacher. I looked up at the night sky, stars glinting faintly through humid air, and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's peace that doesn't need an audience.